everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fabric Tech Talk Fridays. Today I have a very special guest with me, Dinesh. Dinesh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Dinesh Chandrasekhar. I'm an independent analyst. I run a company called Stratola. I'm here at the Microsoft FabCon conference. Excited to be part of this episode. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being here. So before we get started, I know you might have been in the industry for so long, Dinesh. So how did the data landscape evolve over the period of time, especially with the advent of cloud, AI, now real-time intelligence? Tell us a little bit about how it all changed.
So data has been the center of all these different waves that we've seen through, right? So whether it be cloud or mobile or AI or whatever it is, ultimately it's all about data. So what we have seen is not just a shift in architectures from an application perspective, but also a shift in data architectures. What we also have seen is a shift in terms of volume, velocity, and the variety of data, right? So, for example, recently what we have seen is with AI advancing so much into our lives, unstructured data suddenly has become like center point in all of our operations, right? So the PDFs, the tons and tons of PDFs that we have had, images that we have had, scanned images and so forth, all of these were like considered to be hard to use, but suddenly you can use all of these with the advent of AI and LLMs and so forth. So data has suddenly taken a little bit of a pivot in terms of what we can use, what we can take advantage of in our enterprise workflows and so forth. So I feel like with every advent of these different waves that we have seen, it is the data architecture that is always going to be shifting throughout these changes.
Wonderful. So you really touched on some of the things that I wanted to ask later, but we'll get started with how are these big enterprises really thinking about managing all this data, analyzing it. It's a huge task in itself. So what do you think might have shifted, or where are we headed towards?
So early on we had like these point solutions, right? So everybody worked in a very departmental mode of understanding how to look at their data, how to like operationalize it and so forth. So they would have like some type of point solution, whether it be like, let's say, an ingestion tool that they wanted, or maybe a processing tool, or maybe a data analyst tool, or a dashboard, or whatever. Every one of these was an individual purchase from like different vendors, and it was a hodgepodge of like dozens of tools across the enterprise, which led to like, again, chaos. Mm-hmm. But what has happened in the last several, or maybe even a couple of decades, is the advent of data platforms, mm-hmm. right? So there have been a significant advancement of data platforms that have tried to like assimilate and bring together all these different hodgepodge of tools under one umbrella, and making sure that enterprises can have this one single frame, one single source of truth across the organization. So that is what has been happening from that movement perspective, right? So we see data platforms as kind of like the go-to for a lot of the larger enterprises, mm-hmm. and we will see more advancements in those data platforms, as well as we are seeing even with FabCon and the kind of innovations and announcements that you guys have been making, and we see that.
Perfect. So now you did touch on a hodgepodge of all these tools coming together. Companies are really striving towards cost reduction, keeping the data governance aspects. So when you bring all these different tools, do they talk to each other? How do we manage the cost? So how do you think organizations are really thinking about the cost aspect of things, the governance of all these, again, performance is a big deal.
Yeah.
So how do these three things come together with all the advancements?
So I think governance by itself can be a separate episode by itself. But from a cost perspective, I would say that I think has been the game changer for bringing all these tools together. Mm-hmm. When we talk about consolidation, it's not only the complexity across the enterprise, but it's also the cost angle, as you rightly said. So CIOs have been tasked repeatedly year after year saying, hey, how do we bring down the cost? How do we bring down like the number of tools that we have? How can we make sure that we can bring it together so that like there is one throat to choke and one vendor to go after and all that, right? So that's kind of like the mentality. In terms of measurement, I think that's been a major challenge as well. Like organizations do not have the kind of insight into what it is going to cost them from like a 6-month, 1 year kind of a projection. Mm-hmm. And it is applicable towards like not just small vendors, but also like larger vendors, particularly larger vendors, because there are like now so many dials and knobs that you have to like turn to understand what your projection of the cost is going to be. Right. So the more clarity, transparency you get from these vendors, I think it'll be better for customers and enterprises to understand what their annual budget is going to look like, in terms of data loads, in terms of the kind of workloads that they're going to be like computing and processing and so forth.
Perfect.
But then on the other side, you asked about governance, and to me, governance is about the data angle, right? That's again a slightly different way of like looking at this problem, that you forget about complexity, you forget about all of this stuff, but ultimately you look at, from a compliance and regulation perspective, is all my data being governed in a certain way where I can track lineage, I can understand who's using this data, what changes are being made to it, where this particular data is going to, who's consuming it, and at any point can I give like a complete audit of log all these changes and all that. That's a bigger problem to solve, and you do not get that when you have like a diversity of like tools, disparate tools across your organization. You have a data platform, now you have like complete visibility into that, and again it goes back to the point of saying consolidation is like important here.
Absolutely. So I started my career as an ETL developer, and I remember a procedure calling another procedure, another function. So when you really think about the end result, when a business user is looking at, oh, what is the sales amount on the dashboard? How did you arrive at this number? You have to trace all the way back, and unless you have a clear lineage, which we all know, which is super critical, but yet super cumbersome. But yeah, that is top of mind, and it should be top of mind for.
But I'll also add one more thing. Other than like understanding the data changes as well, it is also about the security and privacy aspect of it as well. Governance plays a big role there. So particularly with the advent of AI, and we are talking about unstructured text everywhere, there is an abundance of PII, PHI data across your organization, across all these different types of files and data. So then what that means is you need the ability for your platform to like discover, detect, understand all this different PII, PHI data.
Scrolling.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, and detecting that and making sure that it can mask it, tokenize it, and protect it for your consumers as well.
Perfect. No, I sort of want to take a step back and pivot our conversation to real-time intelligence. So we all know, we work with CSV files where the data is static. You do either daily refreshes or nightly batches. Now more and more we are seeing organizations move toward this real-time intelligence. So can you tell us what are some of the key drivers of organizations really wanting to do that, probably in the landscape that you have?
Yeah, so I think in the last couple of decades, what we've also seen is that data took like a very binary way of segregating itself. One is data at rest, the other is data in motion, right? So data at rest is like where it lands in a data lake, data warehouse and all that, and then you have the ability to like process it as much as you want, however far you want into your archives, right? So that's data at rest. Data in motion is like what's happening right now, continuous data streaming in from like all different types of sources, IoT, log streams, click streams, and all that. And your ability to process that in real time and understand what's going on is super critical for the business. The reason why I mentioned that is most of the organizations today, digital businesses, rely on this data to make sure that their businesses can keep thriving. Some of the most critical decisions, whether to retain a customer within your store by providing them a promo, or like tracking where a particular customer is across the geolocation and knowing where they are in that particular territory, and giving them the right kind of help and assistance and all that, or knowing a particular remote machinery that is out there that is going to fail and sending the kind of support and all that. All those are very, very classic examples, I would say, of real-time data and real-time data intelligence, right? So capturing the data, sensor data, protecting or understanding that data, and then processing it and providing the right kind of insights and acting upon it.
Got it. Just to sort of do a gist on this, it's being more proactive than being reactive.
Yes.
Got it. Now, when really organizations are trying to implement real-time intelligence, there's a lot of apprehension like, oh, that's not for us. So what do you think motivates organizations, or should you think every organization needs some sort of real-time intelligence, or it's only for manufacturing or some specific industry use cases?
I don't think there is any industry today where real-time intelligence is not relevant, right? Almost every single industry you can pick, I can give you like dozens of use cases where you have like real-time data that is needed, that is supposed to be processed in real time, and the analytics need to be produced, right? So I don't think we are at the point where real-time intelligence or real-time data can be ignored. it is a much relevant part of the enterprise, and you need to be able to process it as much as you want to process the other aspects of your enterprise as well.
Perfect. Now, we all know, tools like data platforms or, tools, they sort of bring all these disparate data into one single spot. Now with Fabric, it comes with a lot of different workloads, data engineering, AI, AML, all these different aspects. So what do you think is the shift between the traditional way of doing data or, in terms of architecture versus the modern architecture?
So the traditional methods were like, kind of going back to the earlier response about department level workloads, right? So somebody is a data science department and they took care of like, I have all this data, I'm like doing data science. And then there is another, department that is like more interested in data engineering and they're like processing all these different data silos. So it almost functioned in like different workloads, different departments across our enterprise. What's happening now is the ability for data platforms to spin up these different types of workloads in the same context, in the same purview of like looking at, okay, I can not only spin up this workload to like process real-time data, but I can push that real-time insights into the next workload, which is going to need it for like further processing and analytics and so forth. So the ability to like spin up workloads as and when needed is like a super important aspect of today's data platforms. The second aspect is also from a cost angle that you mentioned, right? So the ability to scale up and down as needed. So cloud compute costs and things like that are going to be expensive. And for customers, for enterprises to recognize that and understand, how to use something like this, process like these massive data volumes that I have without like burning my purse strings, right? So how do I do that is kind of like the big question. So these kinds of like ad hoc workload spin-ups, ability for data platforms to process these kind of workloads is going to be the critical way how operationally it can be done from a cost savings perspective as well.
Wonderful. Now, I wanted to sort of understand your Microsoft Fabric conference. So based on all the exciting announcements around Fabric, what stood out for you and why?
So I have been a Microsoft fan for a while because I started my career in the Microsoft world. I was a big VB developer, and then I moved into C# and whatnot, and so .NET days, right? So that's where I come from. So to see Microsoft invest fully into like Fabric and kind of bring out this bigger vision is really encouraging for the larger community. And what I saw there, sitting in the keynote and listening to all these different announcements, I felt like there is definitely a strong vision towards execution of pulling out this entire end-to-end Fabric, end-to-end platform that not only addresses a specific aspect of your enterprise, but also all the different users, data engineers, data analysts, business users, and so forth. I think that's a big one. The second thing I want to highlight is the ability to consistently support data democratization is a key aspect of Microsoft, in my opinion. A lot of organizations, I feel, kind of stifle by making it very technical, and I think Microsoft has always like enabled the data democratization angle. Anybody and everybody can like query data, get access to data and all that. I think it's a very important thing to talk about, and I think that came out like very clearly in the keynote announcements as well. The last thing I want to like say is kind of one of my pet peeve areas, because I have been big about like this data in motion real-time space, is the real-time intelligence announcements that came out. I think those were really significant. I've been following the product announcements and the roadmap and everything else. It's been fantastic, and one of the things that I heard was this digital twin builder, and then just now I came back from a session where I heard them talk about operational agents and all that, right? I think that's the kind of right direction for a product stack like this, where when you talk about a real-time platform, you focus on 3 boxes: ingest the data, process the data, analyze the data, right? But then there is this undeniable elephant in the room, which is AI, and the ability to like process all this data using AI and all that. So to bring in these kinds of capabilities, bring in AI into the mix and have anomaly detection make like so seamless, and use like operational agents, which are an extension of like your ability to like process such high volume, high velocity data, and produce like real-time insights, I think is like the right thing to do. So I'm very excited about like what's coming out.
Wonderful. So In your mind or in your opinion, how does the next 3 to 5 years going to shape up for real-time intelligence? Because we are on the topic, let's see how the future of real-time intelligence is.
I think I look like a fool if I like start predicting for like 3 to 5 years, because I don't think I can predict even like 2 months from now, because the industry is like changing so much, right? So it is atrocious to even say that I can predict for the next 3 to 5 years. Those used to be the days when things were like happening a little slower, but now with AI happening like so fast, you and I are going to be in for a surprise like every single week with all these different innovations and announcements. So what I would say is I'm excited about the promise of AI and real-time coming together. Excited about the promise of AI being able to democratize access to such complex data streams to the rest of the enterprise, rest of the audiences that were unable to like do so before. And that I think is going to be significant to watch out for. And of course, the advent of agents is going to be taking us to like areas which we never thought probably were possible. Like for example, if you imagine a factory floor, in today's world, what you do is you get sensor data from all these different factory sensors, assimilate them into some kind of a stream where you can process it, or put it into a data lake where you can process it and so forth. And then you say well, this is going to happen in terms of predictive maintenance and all that. That's kind of the use case we have today.
Exactly.
But imagine 1 year from now where we can have agents that are running at the edge, that are actually like monitoring these sensor data right there, and are able to immediately control, bring in service technicians right there and protect that machine from going down, is kind of like where we are headed. That level of autonomy is what we can expect in the space, and the possibilities are endless.
So endless. So before, one last question before we conclude. Dinesh, is how do you think organizations should be prepared to make more data-driven decisions, typically rather than just bringing the data, doing all the transformations and then loading elsewhere? So what do you think they should be prepared for in the advent of AI, and how do they have to make some sort of really intelligent data-driven decision making? What should help?
I think that's a loaded question, so let's try to break it down, right? So first off, acknowledging the fact that your AI strategy is only as good as your data strategy is going to be very, very important. I think that's a key thing, right? So making sure that you know that you have to focus on how to harness your data, how to protect it, how to push it into the right segments, how to unify it, so that your AI can actually make sense out of it, right? So that's very critical. The second thing is to make sure that you don't have this disparate applications that are working on your data across your organization, and having more of a unified platform that can work and help you across the enterprise. That's going to be super critical. So making sure you choose the right platform that can go from end to end for all your users across it. That's another thing. The third thing is kind of what I alluded to earlier, which is the governance aspect of it, right? In this day of AI, when anything and everything can be hallucinated and misinterpreted and misconstrued, you want to make sure that you can have complete control and governance over all of your data. So making sure that you know what your data is, who's touching it, what is changing, how to protect it, masking it where appropriate, and so forth. Every one of those is critical for you to be succeeding in this future where AI is probably going to be part and parcel of all of our enterprise workflows and everything.
Wonderful. Really appreciate all the great insights, Dinesh. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on the show. Like we always say, Patrick, me, and Microsoft, we are really thankful for your time today.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to hit that like button.
If this is your first time visiting the Microsoft Fabric YouTube channel, be sure to smash that subscribe button.
Drop a comment below on what you would like to see on the future episodes of Fabric Tech Talk Fridays.
That's it for today. See you all next Friday for another deep dive in the Microsoft Fabric.